Alright, you finally made it to video 3, example 3. One example, and then you try, and we'll get through this as quick as we can, and hopefully it'll be relatively painless. So we're going to start by noticing that I have that alpha is an acute angle. That's going to come back in a little bit to help us. And I've given you the actual value of cosine 2 alpha, and I want to know what's cosine and what's sine. So we now start with the fact that I know a formula for cosine of 2 alpha, and that formula, actually you know 3 formulas for cosine of 2 alpha, and it doesn't really matter which one you use, but in this case, since I don't know either cosine or sine, I don't want to use the one that has cosine and sine in it, because I wouldn't have something to plug in for either one of them and I wouldn't go anywhere. So I can either use the one that has just cosine squared in it, or the one that has just sine squared in it, and I can use it to solve and figure out my missing value. So I'm going to go ahead and use the one that has cosine in it first, since that's A. So 2 cosine squared alpha minus 1. And this time it's a little different because this 3/4 is what the cosine of 2 alpha is equal. So I can put that 3/4 right over here, and I can say that's equal to 2 cosine squared alpha minus 1. And I have a couple steps I have to do. I'm solving for cosine of alpha, so I've got to add 1. So if I come over here and add 1 to this, adding 1 is to have a common denominator would be the same as adding 4/4. So this side becomes 7/4. And that equals, again, the 2 cosine squared alpha. And so what I would do on this to get rid of the 2 is I would next divide by 2. So that would be gone. And dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half, because dividing by 2 fractions is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I've basically freed up this cosine squared alpha over here, which is what I was trying to do. And on the left side, I can now multiply this, and I would have 7/8. And now, to get cosine alpha instead of cosine squared, I am going to take a square root. Sorry about my penmanship here. Sometimes I can't quite get that alpha. So I'm going to take a square root of both sides. That is what a square root would look like if you didn't know how to write. And so this becomes square root of 7. And the bottom, I can simplify. The square root of 8 is 2 rad 2. And IB does not care if you have radicals in the denominator, so I'm going to leave it just like that. And that is what cosine of alpha equals. I'm going to do one more little thing for you, and that is to be officially mathematically precise. When I take the square root, I need to put a plus and a minus in front. But that's where this comes into play, because if alpha is acute, that means I'm in quadrant 1, and if I'm in quadrant 1, sine and cosine are positive, so I can come back here, my little erase button, and I can get rid of that because I'm just going to take the positive one. So I don't need to worry about that negative root, even though I algebraically do take it. So now I know cosine, I just need to find sine. So you have a couple approaches. One, you can use the formula, which is the other formula for your double angle. You can use 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. Goodness, I cannot seem to get everything to write quite perfect here. Sine squared alpha, I should say, in this case. And you can go through the exact same process we did here, where I've got 7/4 over here, and then I subtract 1, and I would divide by -2 and take a square root. Or, since we now know cosine, we basically have x and r, and I need to find y, so we can do, go back, I'm just going to go back to these, because these are my x and r's, and so I can do, the radius is actually square root of 8 squared equals, my x is square root of 7 squared, and I am attempting to find what y squared is in this problem. So that's x over your r. And so I would have 8 equals 7. And this is supposed to be a plus in here. And plus y squared. And so if I subtract 7, I would have y squared equals 1. And again, y would be plus or minus 1. But because I'm in quadrant 1, I'm going to take the y value as 1 instead of the negative because I'm acute and sine is positive. And so my part B would be that sine of alpha should be y over 2 rad 2. And again, I can keep that in the bottom if I want it, keep it in the bottom. And that should be my answer. And you are now going to make an attempt at doing the you try number 3. So you're going to pause the video and you're going to try it. And then you're going to check your answer with me. So I'm going to go pause. And you should have been done pausing it. And here we go. So again, it's acute, so we only take the positive ones. I do note the double angle is negative 7/9. So again, I add 1. And if I add 1, it's, oh, I see that there's a small, all right. So I add 1, so I get a common denominator, 2/9. Divide by 2 is multiplied by half. So it's really the same process. I get 1/9. I take that square root, which would be plus or minus a third, but I only take the positive one. And then I can, again, that is my x value. That is my r value. So 3 squared equals 1 squared plus y squared. So 9 minus 1 is 8. So my y is square root of 8. And so that would go on top of my r of 3. And there's my sine value. Cosine value is down here. And there you go. You have successfully watched 3 really amazing videos.